Calistoga Associated Teachers believe that cross-cultural learning and appreciation is important, and that knowing more than one language is a real asset. We also acknowledge that dual language immersion programs have been effective in some scenarios. However, I'd like to give a detailed overview of the variety of concerns that have been raised by teachers to really clarify our stance and how it's driven by doing whatever we can to benefit kids in their futures. This presentation, along with all data and sources cited, can be found on our website at calistogaassociatedteachers.org. There was a question raised at the December 2024 board meeting as to why we mentioned schools like Healdsburg and St. Helena in our November board report, instead of talking about other schools such as Cali, Calmekic, and Windsor, James Monroe and Garden Grove, or schools in Westminster. The reason for this is because those schools are not like ours. Those dual immersion programs do not operate as a strand within the only school in a small community district. Those examples are entire schools built around dual immersion. They're optional to attend and are just one of many schools in the district. There are 6 schools in Windsor, 17 in Westminster, and 48 in Garden Grove. In those districts, 1 or 2 dual immersion schools means less than 20% of their schools have been converted to dual immersion, whereas in Calistoga, the proposal is to convert 100% of our schools. We've asked for examples of where this has been unsuccessfully in California, and nobody has given one. Without an example of success in a scenario like ours, this basically equates to a 14-year-long experiment with the futures of children at stake. The closest examples we can find, other than Calistoga's own prior attempts at bilingual education twice in our past, are Healdsburg and St. Helena, where issues arose showing that splitting a small local school can result in problems of inequity, division, or even segregation. We haven't been told how equity or representation of our student population would be ensured in the program. We've been told that anybody who wants to join the dual immersion program may do so, but this itself can create a self-selection bias that leads to inequity. Calistoga teachers believe in equity and representation. The reality is that we do not have a population that's suitable for two-way dual immersion program in Calistoga. The UCLA Civil Rights Project states that the ideal two-way dual immersion model is a balance of 50% English and 50% partner language speakers. The effort to enroll and appease parents of English speakers by allowing programs to become unbalanced, or the practice of tipping the enrollment balance towards speakers of the partner language, significantly impacts the power of the two-way model. This is why the California Department of Education not only states that an effective dual immersion program would ideally be 50% EL students and 50% English only, but also that at the very least it requires a minimum of 33% from each language group. Ideally, there should be a 50-50 balance of partner language speakers and English proficient students. Where that balance is not possible, each language group should account for at least 1/3 of a program's students in order to have enough second language peers in both languages to anchor the language. Out of all the dual immersion schools we could find data for in California, English learners are indeed scoring the highest proficiency on state tests at schools that have populations close to this ideal 50-50 ratio. But in Calistoga, 80% of our incoming students are English learners, which means that we don't have the conditions for effective and equitable two-way dual immersion program. And if we try to create a DLI strand that meets the ideal requirements outlined by research studies, we'll end up with major inequity or even segregation in our schools. We also know that many dual immersion programs that continue into middle school and beyond result in tracking of students in the dual language cohorts. This means the kids do not end up mixing with other students in school classes, and in most cases their opportunities for taking electives end up being reduced as well, since 1 or 2 course periods are required for classes like Spanish. This limits opportunities for things like art, music, and more. Calistoga schools have been able to achieve great success by having research-proven strategies that work, including small class sizes and targeted interventions. We're worried about how these will be impacted if dual immersion is adopted. We've been told that a dual immersion program could attract more students to apply to our schools. If this causes class sizes to increase, research shows that these larger classes can cause lower student engagement, lower test scores, and more behavior problems. We have concerns about impacts to academic proficiency and test scores if we adopt dual immersion. And we're particularly thinking about students who have ever been identified as English learners, which makes up the largest majority of our student population. Research shows that test scores could go down for up to 7 years and also shows lower reclassification rates through 7th grade and possibly beyond. These outcomes go directly against meeting our benchmarks for goal number 1 of our local control accountability plan, which includes growth goals in both state tests and the local MAP tests, as well as goals for reclassification of English learners. This could cause our California dashboard results to permanently become worse at Calistoga Elementary School, and would likely make our current problem with redesignation of long-term English learners even worse. According to research by Thomas and Collier, EL students in two-way immersion programs can be expected to close the achievement gap in later years, starting in 5th or 6th grade. However, when we look at CASP data for students who've ever been identified as EL, we're not seeing dual immersion students doing better than our students here in Calistoga. We found English proficiency scores on the state CASP test for over 100 dual immersion schools in California. And when we look at fifth grade scores, our 43% proficiency rate is almost twice as high as the 24% average proficiency rate in dual immersion schools with student populations similar to ours. In fact, our students are doing better on the state test than 97% of similar Spanish dual immersion schools we can find in California. Some have argued that it just takes more time to see results. So we looked at 8th grade scores, and we can't find a single similar dual immersion school in the state of California with a higher proficiency rate than Calistoga Junior Senior High. The same is true for the highest grade level test at 11th grade. There are a very small number of high school dual immersion programs that we can even find due to the numerous difficulties of executing and maintaining a dual immersion program all the way through high school. But out of the ones we can find, not a single school with similar demographics to ours is showing better achievement in English or math for these students. Clearly, we are doing something right. While there's still room for improvement, we're beating the odds for these students. Some people may not understand why test scores even matter, but according to research, they absolutely do. Research shows that academic difficulties, as indicated by low test scores, are predictive of behavior problems, including internalized behaviors like depression and anxiety, as well as externalized behaviors such as classroom disruptions and bullying. What's worse is that research also shows that these sorts of behaviors in turn negatively impact academics and test scores. In other words, lower test scores could cause a downward spiral and a vicious cycle of both declining academic performance and worsening behaviors. Calistoga Associated Teachers are going to voice concerns about any action that may not only lower test scores, but also lead to problems with the emotional well-being or safety of students. And of course, test scores have an impact on the college and career opportunities of students. CASP scores have been found to be predictors of college admission rates and success. Only 4% of University of California students didn't meet proficiency on the state tests. Additionally, these test scores can be used by CSU schools to predict college readiness and determine which level of math and English courses incoming students are placed into. We've been told that a big benefit of dual immersion would be that students can earn a seal of biliteracy, and that this contributes to the college and career portion of the California School Dashboard. While that's truly a great achievement, it's something that our students can already do in Calistoga schools. In fact, up to 37% of students have achieved this honor in recent years at the junior senior high school. And our college and career readiness is already high. We have the highest admission rates in Napa County for Hispanic students, and we are scoring green for high performance in the California Dashboard. And if you look at the proficiency rate of 11th graders in those dual immersion programs with populations similar to ours, it appears that the majority of English learners do not, in fact, end up biliterate by the end of high school, because more than half of them are not demonstrating proficiency in English on the state tests. We keep hearing that we're not meeting the needs of our English learners, but as you can see, we're on the right track and are truly beating the odds. The California School Dashboard shows our students at Calistoga Elementary School are making better progress than at any of the dual immersion schools I've heard mentioned at Calistoga School Board meetings. As you can see, this is not about change is hard or change is scary. Our concerns come from the fact that Calistoga Associated Teachers care about equity and representation, about the emotional well-being of students, about the safety and security of students, and about their future college and career opportunities.